Hey there, and welcome to Google's Innovation for the Nation 2013. I'm Christopher Dorbeck, anchor and managing editor of GovLoop's Dorbeck Insider, an online program and blog that focuses on 6 words, helping you do your job better. And that's exactly what we're focused on here today, helping you do your job better. And we're doing that by introducing you to government transformers. I know it sounds like a Hollywood movie, but they're actually the people who are out there figuring out how to get the job done in these they're challenging times, right? We all know that. We're going to talk about automation today, and I know you hear the term automation and you're ready to like click the screen. Don't do that, because this one's going to be awesome. We're going to talk about something that everybody has to deal with, performance reviews. We all hate them, don't we? We hate getting them, we hate giving them, but they can be time consuming, they can be, well, let's be honest, they're painful. And we're going to introduce you to somebody who is making that easier. So you want to know this person, for goodness sakes. And we also, as we go forward, we want to hear from you. If you have questions or comments, there are 2 ways you can reach us. You can submit your questions right here in the virtual conference center. Visit the networking lounge within the event and just click on the button that says Ask a Question, and I will be scanning those, and we'll try and get as many of those as we can. You can also tweet us using the hashtag IFTN2013, Innovation for the Nation 2013. Or you can send me a note directly at CDorabeck, and again, we'll get to as many of those questions as we possibly can. Already had a whole bunch of great conversations today. We talked about mobile and security. We just finished up talking about the National Archives and their process for moving to a collaboration platform and what that means and how they did it. Pretty cool. All of these conversations are going to be available to you like on demand. It'll be on the Google Federal YouTube page, and if you registered, we'll send you the link and make it nice and easy for you. And still ahead, we're going to talk about engaging users using web apps, cool web apps, innovative web apps, and equipping your employees with the power of context. How cool does that sound? But let's talk about automation, and specifically automation of performance reviews. I know all those words together sound horrible, but this is going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Rocio Alvarez, she is the Chief Information Officer at the Energy Department's Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory out in Walnut Creek, California, and Mashad Harari is from Google. And with that, I will hand it to you, Mashad.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, everyone. I know you've had a few sessions already, so let me just say that this session is going to focus on developers and how you can expand what we already give you. You've already heard from Noah and other users who use Google Apps out of the box, the collaboration, the messaging, all of those applications that are already provided by Google and designed and run by Google. But what we're going to talk about today is how can you expand that? How can you create your own processes, automation, using these services and even external services using what we call Google Apps scripting. And Rocio is going to talk to you about how to use this to make this process that I think Chris referred to as horrible into something that's
painful,
into something that's really enjoyable and not so painful. So what is Google Apps? Before we jump into talking about how it can be used, it makes sense to kind of give you a little bit of background about what it is that we're talking about. It's really nothing more than using JavaScript, which is something that all of us developers have had quite a lot of experience with, and bringing that into this platform to allow developers to really get creative and use not only Google services that we provide and the APIs that they come with, but also external services. So this is really a way for you to do things like add your own menus to Google Documents and create your own functionality for spreadsheets, for example. And if you want to get really creative, we also have APIs that allow you to create your own user interface and create your own form, your own website, put it in a Google site, or create your own site and basically just run your own application using these APIs. So how do you do that? The cool thing about this platform is that it's all run from your browser, so you don't really need to download anything heavy on your local machines. You can do it from any computer that runs a modern browser. And what's really my favorite functionality here, and what I think Rosie is going to touch on, is the fact that you can create these great scripts and then in true Google fashion share them. So you could create a script that you really like and then put it in what we call a script gallery, which is basically available to all of Google Apps users. And by installing this piece of code on your own domain, you can take advantage of somebody else's code. So if you're not a developer, no worries, you can go here and look for something that will do what you're trying to do. And one thing that I should add here, because I know security is really important, is that by sharing your code, you're not really sharing access to your domain, and by using this code, the users are not really sharing their domain with you. Basically, the ACLs are controlled by the domain owners. And I think that's what we're going to hear from the Berkeley Labs and how they used one of these already published scripts to automate this painful process that they have. So without further ado, I'm going to start talking to Rocio, and maybe what she can do for us is lay the land and tell us about the problem that you guys were trying to solve with these solutions, these cut solutions that you were looking at.
Right. I need to get control of the...
Yep.
It's not coming. Oh, there we go. Okay.
It's coming.
Sorry, there it is.
Okay.
Little technical difficulties here. So the business problem we're trying to solve, as we all heard, I'm going to talk about the painful process of performance reviews. I don't know that it was any less painful. The pain just lasted a lot, you know, it was a lot shorter, the pain period. So in automating, we made something that took a very long time, took lots and lots of, you know, spreadsheets and documents floating around. We automated it using Google Apps. And so the problem we have about close to 2,800 employees who are all writing these self-assessments. Then they submit those to supervisors. Supervisors submit them to senior managers. Then the HR staff gets involved. And then finally, our director of our lab saying, I want 100% compliance. Everyone must do this. And again, this was all done via email and all sorts of, written paper and all sorts of other things of that nature. We wanted to try and automate that, make that less cumbersome. So we had looked at a couple of solutions. We looked at commercial solutions, which were very expensive, number one, time-consuming to implement. And then our HR department kept changing their requirements, and different departments had different requirements. So we couldn't really, we couldn't find a good solution. And then we had a day when we were previewing some of the new technologies we have, and we were showing some new and cool things you could do with Google Apps. And one of our users came to us afterwards and said, why don't you use Google Apps to try and automate the performance management process? And we said, wow, what a great idea. And so we started that. We took them up on their suggestion and used Google Apps for that.
So this user, was this user a developer, or were they a regular user that just used Google Apps? It was a regular user.
It was a regular user who was, just there to listen to us and see what new and cool things Google Apps could help them do in the workplace. So it wasn't anybody who had any really in-depth technical expertise. Wasn't a developer of any kind.
Okay. So maybe you can walk us through what did you do next? How did you implement this?
Sure. We used, earlier you were showing the scripts gallery. We found Autocrat in particular, which is a series of app scripts that let you merge documents. So using that, we use Google Docs, we use Mail and Sites, and then we modified app script, the Autocrat app script to better to work with our workflow. We brought in the HR people who sat with us. Talked about the kind of data we would need from them. We worked with the points of contact at all the divisions to train them on what they were going to have to do. And then we sort of ran through various, we'd had a couple of pilots The IT division was one, and we walked through and had it, ran through the process from the HR extracting the data all the way to the supervisor doing a final PDF version of the performance management form. So the way we started with this, this is the merge scripts that we started with. This is just a Google sheet. We extracted data from HR. You'll see there that we have employee email, supervisor name, kind of sort of regular HR data. So we had that. Then we defined the settings for the custom email. So this is the email that the person's going to get saying, "Dear Jane, your employee's self-assessment is ready for you to fill out. Please fill it out." And then we identify the variables that go from the spreadsheet that go into this email.
Rocio, just let me have you. You're not sharing your screen, so they can't click on it. So if you can just use that program, and they'll get your slides right up there, so folks can all be on the same page.
Okay, I thought I was sharing my screen. Oh, I'm sorry. Show my screen. Okay.
There you go.
Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that.
No, that's okay. We just wanted to all be. You were talking about such great stuff. We all wanted to be on the same page. They got it. Thank you.
All right. So, so here's the email that gets defined. Again, I said the variables you select that go to that you include in the email from, again, that spreadsheet that you saw that you didn't see earlier. Then here's the email you would send out to the employee. This is what it would look like. They would receive something like that says your self-assessment is ready, and please follow these steps, and clickable links for them to go and fill out their form. Here's the actual template that we developed for all the points of contact at all the divisions. These people were the ones that they were the ones that were getting their particular division or department's data together and sending these out to their employees. Here you have them on this particular slide, shows them mapping fields from the Google Sheet to create, again, they basically do field mappings here to create that email, the form actually that will go out, not the email, the actual performance self-assessment.
So just if I can interject here, you're basically just setting up, you're not really coding anything, you're just configuring a lot of what the code is using, and it's basically just a mapping of, here is my template, this is the code, this is what the code is looking for, basically, right?
That's it. It's mapping fields, variables from the spreadsheet, mapping them onto a Google Doc.
Okay.
And then sending out an automated email that goes to the employee and then links them to the form that they then fill out themselves. And this is what the form looks like once they get it. So, Sarah, supervisor, sends it out to Maggie, manager, or vice versa. And this is what she gets. This is what the employee then sees, performance year beginning, and then they edit the document just like any Google Doc. So this wasn't terribly, there was no learning curve here whatsoever for our staff because all of them use Google Docs.
Okay.
They know how to go in and edit a document, and that's what they did. They entered their information, and it does auto-save. So it's all pretty seamless for them. Then once they were done, they would go back, they'd get this screen that would then allow them they'd go actually to a Google site, sorry. They'd go to a Google site, which was one of the links from that initial email that they got. They'd have this available, they'd go to the site there, and they'd say, "I'm finished," and they'd click on this. That would then trigger an email to their supervisor that says, your Jane finished her self-assessment, and it's now ready for you to go in and do your part. So this is now the supervisor receiving their email and saying, okay, now here's all the list of all of what I have to do with all the links where I have to go. You walk through, supervisor completes the performance form, They add their content, revise as needed. Again, go back to the Google site. Person's done. Now the supervisor says, click, there I am, I'm finished, I finalize it. And that's pretty much done.
Okay. And you guys use Google Sites in different parts of this application, right? You also used it as a dashboard, kind of, to bring in statistics and.
Right. We did that. We had metrics and information. We had actually even a little videos for them to watch if they wanted to. We had information there, so it's not only was tracking. It was a resource site. It was tracking the current completed, yet to be completed, how many days to completion. But it had, as I said, presentations, videos, FAQs, all sorts of other information. So it was a real resource, sort of central resource for the supervisors and staff. And they would also get, supervisors would get automated metrics that would go out to them saying, you know, your percent self-assessment, how many have been done, how many have been received by HR, and so on. Because we're required to do 100% completion of these. Every single person has to do one.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think we are too. It's not the funnest time of the year.
No,
you
it's
have to
not.
do these things. Yeah, so this is great. So this site is basically, when I look at it, it's really an aggregation of all the stuff that you already created in Google Apps, and you just basically create, I guess portal is the word to use. I know nobody likes portals anymore, but portal is basically what you created for all of your information to be in one place, and then people can go click it and get access to the data, basically.
Yep.
And how long did it take to do all of this?
You know, it wasn't terribly time-consuming. We spent about a month of development and test time. And we, you know, it was again, you know, as we've heard many people say, it's a very horrible and painful process. So any reduction in the amount of pain that people have to undergo was very welcome by staff. So we basically did, you know, we just standardized how this happens and automated that process. So it wasn't, you know, a Word document here, a SharePoint document over here, you know, written piece of paper over there. So we tried to, you know, it wasn't rocket science, but we had the tools that we had available. We were able to do this.
Rocio, can I just butt in for 2 seconds, because we hear one of the advantages of doing automation is that it takes all that grunt work that you know takes so much time and energy and effort that doesn't really add value, and allows you to focus on really doing the important. We all know that performance reviews are so important, both in having that conversation with the person, and this is the first step of doing that. Have you found that it's actually helped people do better performance reviews?
You know, I think it does in that it reduces the amount of time you spend in all of these transactions around tracking the information. Did I revise it? Who's revised it? Who hasn't? So it streamlines the workflow. So it lets you spend more time talking to your staff member, focusing on actually the content of what you're going to write, as opposed to, you know, remembering where it is in the process. You know, what stage it is in the process. Where did I leave off? You know, because how many of us start a performance review, get halfway through it for one of your staff members, and then run off to do something else, and then you come back to it 2-3 days later and you can't remember where you were with it, what you said, did you really mean it? You have to go back and think that all through. So this way, this holds it for you in a place where you know exactly where to go, and you don't spend that extra time looking around. You spend time on content.
Well, and Michelle mentioned this a little bit, but I have one of the powers that Google Hangouts give me is this TSP with the folks who are listening, and I can hear them sort of saying, this sounds so complex to do, but you did it. It wasn't horribly complex, and you did it relatively quickly, didn't you?
Right. It was you know, it was actually pretty straightforward. It was, you know, this is definitely one of those, what you know, you hear the term, the phrase used so often, the low-hanging fruit, and I think this one was on the floor. It wasn't even low-hanging. You know, we picked it up off the floor. It was something that was just ready for automation, and you know, Google Apps was just some really simple tools to use, and they're very familiar to our users. You know, it's not some foreign new interface that you were going to bring to them. They use docs, they use sites, they use, these were all familiar. They use the spreadsheets. They all of the interfaces we showed them looked very familiar to them.
How long have you guys been on Google Apps? Or?
We were one of your early federal adopters, I think 2010, early 2010.
Okay, so you've seen the changes in the growth and the fact that you don't need to update anything; it just comes to you, and that's one of the greatest things about
Right.
it. So, what is the ROI you're experiencing? Do you see, are people coming to you and saying, "Oh my God, I have so much more time. I'm going to go do something really cool that I couldn't do before"?
There's a couple of places now throughout the lab that are looking at using Google Apps to automate other processes. One that comes to mind, we have a nanoscience facility that's available to use for anyone in the Department of Energy throughout the country, and we have lots of people who come through and use the instruments. They're very expensive, and many hundreds of these instruments that are there. And they're going to use Google Calendar to schedule these resources, the instruments, and then they're going to use a Google Calendar API to automate tracking the usage and reporting that usage back to the Department of Energy. So there's new, people are coming up with new ideas for using Google Apps to automate things that are, tedious or labor intensive.
Painful, maybe.
Painful too.
Horrible process.
And you sort of went by fairly quickly, but the fact that this was brought to you by somebody who just said, "Hey, this is a horrible process. Let's not do this anymore," and then you listen to them. That doesn't happen always in organizations. So congratulations, and it has to feel good that you've created an environment where people can come to you and say, "Hey, there may be a better way to do this." That has to feel awesome in and of itself.
It does. It does. We try to listen to, our staff. I mean, we're fortunate in that we work with very sophisticated scientists, and they're usually thinking way ahead of us. So that's sometimes a blessing and sometimes not a blessing, but it is.
Okay, you can say it. It's like sometimes a curse.
But it does keep us on our toes, and we do listen to them. They have some really great ideas.
We're quickly running out of time, so I don't mean to step on you, Mashad, but I want to ask both of you who have both seen this process your takeaways. And Mashad, start with, you've seen this process and you've seen this at other agencies. Are there lessons learned that folks who aren't at the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, what should they be taking away from this?
Well, I'm thinking that a lot of times when you are talking to government and they have a specific problem, it's not that unique. A lot of problems are shared among a lot of us. And if we can start to share our ideas, and if a simple solution can resolve the problem without having to spend a lot of money, a lot of developer time, a lot of coding, then that's a great thing. That saves all of us money. As taxpayers, it saves us money. As organizations, it saves them time and money. So looking at what's happening with cloud computing in general, I can see a lot of good things coming out of this.
And Rocio, your lesson learned from this, what do you take away that other agencies can learn from your experience?
I think I mentioned a few of them already. This was a very, a process that was just very ripe for automation. Listen to your users. Use Google Apps is a pretty easy tool to learn, and people are trying to kind of understand it. And so if they make suggestions around how to automate or use them, listen to your users. And another thing I would also like to add, one of the things, App Scripts is a pretty powerful tool. We're trying to use it in a number of ways, and sometimes it's worked well for us, and sometimes it hasn't. So I would also say that you have to. There's a couple of things to around AppScript that you have to recognize its limitations. It's not. Sometimes it's a challenge for it to be a full enterprise tool. So you have to keep that in mind when you're working with AppScript. Sometimes at scale, it doesn't quite perform the way one would hope it does. So you'll have to play with it a bit. You'll have to have your developers look at it and see what its limitations are and where its strengths are.
We're all still learning so much. A lot of these technologies are relatively new, and just the concept that we were talking earlier about the consumerization of the enterprise market, where you can have an employee who comes and says, hey, do this, that's pretty amazing stuff, an amazing time that we live in. I want to thank Rocio Alvarez. She is the Chief Information Officer at the Energy Department's Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, and Masad Harari. She is from Google. Great job. Thank you both very much. Really remarkable stuff. A reminder, if you didn't get to ask your questions, Rocio and Mashad are going to be, not hanging out. They'll be, you can not text them, but you can chat with them in our virtual conference center, so you can do that. And this and all of our sessions will be available on demand on Google Federal's YouTube site. If you registered, we'll send you the link, and you can find them all nice and easy. One other reminder, there is a survey that's right in the virtual conference center. What did you think of this event? What do you think of the moderator? He doesn't have enough hair. I don't know. Whatever you think, you can tell the survey. It's right there at the bottom of the page, and if you can fill that out, I know the Google folks would be really, really happy. Here's what we have coming up. We're going to talk about equipping your employees with the power of context. Pretty cool stuff. But up next, we're going to talk about engaging users using innovative web apps. The census is actually doing it. We're going to talk about that just ahead. That's right ahead on Google's Innovation of the Nation.